This question starts us off with the phrase in the XY plane. So that means it's going to be a graphing question. I'll certainly be using graphing rules. I might even draw a picture, but let's see what the question tells us. Region R consists of all the points x comma y such that, and then you're given this inequality. 2x plus 3y is less than or equal to 6. Now this is not going to be a line, this is going to be a region, and I'm going to show you what that looks like in just a second. But we can do the math the same way. To graph this region, we need to isolate the y, so let's move the 2x to the other side, and then let's divide by 3. So y is less than or equal to negative 2/3 x plus 2. On test day, you're going to have this great lined graph paper that's laminated, so you can draw really accurate graphs if you so choose, and I'm going to take advantage of that here. I want to put a couple of points on this line so I can figure out what it looks like. If x was 0, y would equal 2. And using slope rules, I can go down 2 and run forward 3. And now I have 2 points, so I have the line. This negative slope line would go down and to the right. But since this says less than or equal to, it's ultimately a region. It's not just a straight line. It's everything on the line and underneath it. And that's why the question referred to it as region R. So everything in this region is governed by this equation. And the prompt goes on to ask, is the point r comma s in this region? So what it comes down to is the coordinate, and we need to know about r and s to answer this yes-no question. Well, let's see what the facts tell us. Fact 1 says that 3r plus 2s is equal to 6. Now this looks like a really good opportunity to use test it, so that's what I'm going to do. I want to pick some coordinates that fit this equation, graph them, and then see if they're in the region or not. So let's start off with simple things. If r was 2, s would have to be 0, because 3 times 2 plus 2 times 0 is 6. So consider the point 2 comma 0. Where is it? Well, it's 2 over 0 up, and you can see that that's inside the region, so this gets a little yes. But I could go in the other direction. What if I made the r 0, and then the s would be 3? Well, where is 0 comma 3? That's 0 over 3 up, and that is clearly outside of the region, so it gets a little no. That proves to you that fact 1 is insufficient because we've got 2 different answers. So you can knock out A and D, and now we're moving on to fact 2. Now this gives us a couple of inequalities for the individual variables. R is less than or equal to 3, S is less than or equal to 2. Looking at the work that I did in fact 1, I can see there's actually a point that I can use here, 2 and 0, since 2 is less than 3 and 0 is less than 2. And I've already tracked that point. I know it gets me a yes answer, so that's a nice little shortcut. But now I'm thinking I should probably max these variables out, make the R3 and the S2, because that's what I'm told is possible. Graphing that 3 over 2 up, I'm clearly outside of the region, so I get another no, and that makes fact 2 insufficient. 2 different answers, so knock out B. Combining, I have a lot of information to work with. I know that 3r plus 2s is 6. I know the r is less than or equal to 3. I know the s is less than or equal to 2. And I can see that I already have one coordinate that fits everything, 2 comma 0, and that gets me a yes. Now for thoroughness' sake, looking at all my examples, I've been dealing with positive numbers and zeros and integers only. I'm going to talk about what happens when you start dealing with fractions or decimals. If I made the s2, if I maxed that out, and I worked back into this first equation, the r would have to equal 2/3. And that's permissible because this equation equals 6, the r is less than or equal to 3, and the s is less than or equal to 2. But when you look at the graph, 2/3 and 2 is clearly outside the region. Y would equal 2 when x equals 0, and then it starts dropping. So this is outside the region. It's barely outside, but it is outside, and that gives me a no answer. So even in the end, it's insufficient, and I'm picking E. Graphing questions oftentimes take 2 to 3 minutes on test day. They're usually not too tough, and many of them in data sufficiency are perfect for test it. So if you're going to draw a picture, great. If you're just going to use equations and test values, that's great too. But in the end, this is actually a really easy question to get correct. It's just a bit labor intensive. If you can do this in 2 to 3 minutes, you should. This is a question that can get you a little bit of points. If you have a pacing problem and you need to sacrifice this, that's fine as well. But in the end, this is actually a pretty easy question. It's based on some concepts that you already know. And when it comes to points that matter and points that don't, you've got to ask yourself, which questions do I know how to do? And am I getting those questions right? You put your emphasis onto those questions. No silly mistakes, write everything down, and you're going to end up with a score that you're happy with.